Hey guys, this is a Cactus, or for some you may know me as Bidoof, and today we'll be showing a full clear run on SP Rush, which is arguably the hardest content that just came out this week in Blue Protocol. Commentary will be kinda light since there is not too much to go over. If you would like to read up on a guide about this raid, I made one and will be shown in the link description below. So go check that out. Also, gear will be shown at the end of this video. Anyways, this is the first raid in BP that's I would recommend to have most people in the team to be in a BC for. Everyone has to make sure they're rotating their buffs and debuffs, otherwise it'll quickly result in a team wipe since the enemies can 1 to 2 shot most classes without them. Our team has set timers for when each person should buff or debuff to make it a little bit easier since we don't have to communicate too much. Generally though, communication is still important in cases where you, let's say, miss your buff timer due to a bad overlap with the enemy attacks. However, this is still possible to run in pugs, but just note that you'll be at a disadvantage if you don't call out anything in the event that someone misses something like an important debuff or buff. I think this raid still took us about 10 to 12 hours to prog and get our first clear even with communication. So that's really huge considering all the other content so far you can pretty much do in like 1 or 2 tries or maybe within an hour with some of the hard content. Really good too, considering most haven't cleared yet. We also didn't have a blast archer or twin striker, which made some of the parts of the run way harder, but made the overall run easier. I think we were also the first group that cleared without both of these classes, so we did a good job overall. This raid was a lot of fun to prog, but it definitely highlights a big problem of the game. I hope the community does communicate the problems to Bandai since they have shown for like the past 9-10 months of this game being released that they take feedback really seriously to improve the game, so I'm optimistic that it'll get better over time. It has gotten better over time, and I'm kind of excited for when the global launch happens and you guys get all these cool bells and whistles of quality of life changes. But anyways, one of the biggest problems of this fight is the visual clarity. It's really hard to see what the enemy is doing, and it's important to actually see what the enemy is doing at most times. Or I shouldn't say most times, fairly often. And it's really hard to do that when, your screen just looks like something out of Balloon's tower defense. You just see a bunch of explosions happening in your screen and you just don't know what's happening. But fortunately, just like Balloons, the most important things I need to see are stuff like, your buffs and debuffs, and just generally like an idea of where the enemies are, pretty much. I already turned down some of the effects to the lowest, but there's nothing else I can do. You can hide all the buffs, but you definitely don't want to do that, so you know if someone is not buffing or debuffing, Besides that, the raid was fun to do, and even if you cannot clear, it's fine since there's no real progression reward tied to this raid. You just get like a cosmetic that you can put on your character card profile. Kind of cool, but not really important. And it'll also get a lot easier as stronger gear gets released too. Besides all that, let's go over what's happening in the raid. So right now we're in wave 2, which is arguably the hardest round in SP Rush. This is where most runs tend to fail. The robots have a high likelihood of dashing away, so it's important to have good damage to push the wave faster in the event that they keep moving too much. And because they keep moving too much, they might leave some of the debuffs, like you might miss some of the debuffs. So it's important that the classes that do debuff keep in mind if they did miss or not to try to reapply the debuff again at their earliest convenience, And also the team can't really chase the mobs outside the corner, otherwise they lose a lot of the buffs that you see just placed on the ground there. All those circles, those are all buffs. And they just will die if they leave the circle, pretty much. And another unfortunate thing in this wave is that the enemies have a chance to get stuck behind that invisible wall near us. It doesn't happen too often. I think it's like about 1 in every 5 runs. I don't know, maybe that's a little too often for people, but for me it's not too bad. But yeah, it's still pretty frustrating, especially if it's a really good run so far. But surely it gets patched before the global version gets released for you guys. Oh, and I also forgot to mention why it's a bad thing that they get stuck behind the invisible wall. So basically, if they're behind that invisible wall, you can't do any damage to them. Well, you can, but like 99% of the attacks will not land. So it generally results in a reset. Again, really frustrating. After the team succeeds in clearing Wave 2, Wave 3 is a lot easier, but it can still easily wipe the team if they're not prepared. The Wave 3 enemies can apply a debuff called Fear to about like a third of their attack patterns, which is a crowd control or CC that makes your team unable to do anything. You can quote free your teammates by pressing F on them if they get feared. Eventually you do get immunity from feared for about a minute after getting feared 3 or 4 times. Kind of scary wave since it can impact when buffs come up, so it's important to communicate that to the team. It's also equally as important to make sure that everyone is getting feared at different times. You don't want everyone to get feared at the same time, otherwise it may result in a team wipe. So, and we don't have Blast Archer to cure the fears, so buffs like my class where it has Rock Body, it's a class skill that prevents status elements from happening while the shield is up, makes it kind of easier to stagger the debuffs. So yeah, OP class. And outside of that, I'll just let the rest of the run play out. Again, if you want to see the strategy for this, check out the guide in the description. Like and sub if you found this helpful or interesting, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye for now.